How you doing, guys? It is another Tuesday, so we're going to try talk a little bit about things in fitness and things in the gym. A little later today, I got a bit distracted, was doing some IKEAing, you can probably see it behind me, and I nearly forgot to do this actually. But nonetheless, one of the things we get questions about every now and again is when somebody has an injury. Can I train? Should I train? How should I train? It can depend on the injury, but generally there's no point in throwing all your training out the window for one little niggle. And injuries can happen for all kinds of reasons. They could happen because of something in the gym. They could happen equally, an injury might be a strong word for this, but if you slept funny and a muscle is tight or a muscle is sore, you might be a bit limited with that. And you could equally just have a trip or a fall. And that happens often as well, where someone will actually fall and stick the hand out and all of a sudden they've hurt their wrist. So the first thing to do is realize that when you're in pain, that is your body giving you a signal to stop. Don't ignore it. This expression I hate the most in the fitness industry in the last couple of years is actually no pain, no gain. Pain is your body telling you to stop. Now you can be uncomfortable. It's fine to be uncomfortable. You do 100 reps of squats in one setting. It is going to be very uncomfortable, but it should not be painful. And some people don't get that distinction. Pain is a very serious thing. If you've had an injury, if you've needed physical therapy, you will start to understand the distinction. But what happens a lot is people put themselves into precarious positions because they don't really understand the difference there. When that phrase is made, they're not talking about pain, they're talking about discomfort. So nonetheless, to give a very specific example, say you hurt your wrist. Can you train in the gym? Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff. You can do one arm stuff, for instance, and there's a lot of research to show that even if we'll say you're not using your right hand, if you do work with your left hand, you're still going to get some muscle build on the right. Now, obviously not as much as the one that's actually working, but your central nervous system wants to create balance in the body. There's been a lot of studies done, usually more specifically guys with a broken leg, where they'll train one leg while not training the other, and there still can be muscle gains on the leg that's not moving. It's small, but it's enough to stop it going backwards, to stop it atrophy. And when you're getting back into it, when that joint is, when you're starting to put work on that again, it still pays to be conservative. So the wrist would be one example. You would basically exclude it from the program for a while to make sure you're not going to hit it. And then when you do bring it back, don't just suddenly decide, it feels fine, I'm going to go back in to pressing what I used to do. That might not be a great idea, because there's always going to be that part of your recovery where it feels fine, but that is just for your everyday use, which is probably on this line. And you might just have the sensation here where you've just hit the border where your wrist is strong enough to get through your daily routine, but it might not be strong enough to last through your workout routine. You could go up here again with your workout and you could end up going backwards. Patience is the key. So another example would be when someone has, say, a hip problem or a hip injury. I had one last year, which is the reason I'm going to give this specific example. Hip's actually a tricky one. You'd be surprised how it can link into a couple of things. And I made that mistake. I had been very careful with a lot of the exercise selection. There was a lot of even abdominal exercises were aggravating. It was quite acute for a while. And I worked around it. And I'd even gone a couple of weeks without directly hitting it and thought it was fine. And then I did this tiniest bit of ab work and, well, back down. Wasn't even that much. So don't ever rush it. If you're not too sure, just take it as slow as you possibly can. It's a long road. You'll always get back there. And a good coach will always help you with that. Often what a good coach needs to do is pull them back. There was a couple of guys I was reading, I can't remember specifically which coach I was listening to on a podcast or reading about, but he said when he was talking about elite athletes, he said very, very, very rarely is overtraining a problem at that level. It's always about trying to pull them back from doing too much. And it's a very easy thing to do. You get in the zone, you're lifting strong, you're doing very well in a program, you're enjoying the progress, and then suddenly you hit that little hiccup. And it's all too easy to say, oh, I'm just going to rest for a week and then go back in full bore. Sometimes you just need to take that as a sidestep and say, okay, my hip is a bit limited right now. There's a lot of other stuff you can focus on. You know, it's a year-round thing. So what if you ease back on something for a small while? It is a lot better to take it easier for a month and then bring it back up gradually, as opposed to think after 2 weeks, oh, I'm fine, and go back in and then injure yourself, and it's going to feel twice as bad. It's probably the same injury as what you had before, but nonetheless it's quite demotivating. So if you're ever unsure, always a good option to visit a physical therapist. A good physical therapist will always advise you, you can do this, this and this. They shouldn't just say to you, do nothing. They will be able to give you advice on what exercise you can do. Like, as I said, it might be a case of there's certain exercises you have to avoid for a while, do some gentle rehab work, and that's fine. Everyone has their place and their level they're coming from, but try not to rush it. That's the big thing I would say. Like, it's all too easy to rush it. It's all too easy to think you're right back where you were, and you try to go back at where you were, and all of a sudden it's down the stairs again. So don't ever feel you have to rush it. Even when you feel good, just take it very easy with those motions when you're starting back in. So that was just kind of one thing I wanted to say about injury. We had a couple of people who had one or two little niggles in the last couple of months, and it's something that comes up every now and again. People get injured, people have falls. You know, someone could be playing with a kid, stumble on their ankle. Someone could just sleep funny, wake up with a tightness in a certain place, and so on and so forth. And you can't really stop these things. They're always going to happen. It's just a case of when they do, give it the time. Okay? So best of luck, guys. Look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care.